It used to sing, now it murmurs, now it echoes back nothing. But the silence doesn't just belong to the ocean. It also followed Christina Mittermeier above sea level as she approached one of the most intimidating stages of her life. She spent decades underwater, capturing imagery of life that most people will never see. She helped pioneer the field of conservation photography, and she believes that a single image can shift the world. She's a co-founder of Sea Legacy, winner of 2 Emmys, and a partner with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative. But earlier this year, she found herself out of her element, on stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos. In front of influential people, Christina didn't carry a camera, she carried her voice. Today on the show, how speaking up can save the sounds of the ocean. I'm Alex Honnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve some of today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries.
My name is Christina Mittermeier. I'm a photographer, I'm a conservationist, I'm a humanitarian. How do I stay optimistic? That's a tough one because there are some days that are really dark. For people like me who are in the front lines and I get to see the best and the worst, some days are hard. And I have to remind myself that Martin Luther King didn't start the speech by saying, I have a nightmare. He talked about a dream, and I tried for my photography to be that dream, a reminder of what the potential of our planet is, and my job is to manifest that destiny. The invitation to speak at Davos is, first of all, really intimidating because I'm completely out of my element, but I also saw it as an opportunity. So as scared as I was to say yes, I thought, you know what, just bite the bullet and dive in. And it was amazing. The task for that was twofold. I had to prepare a very complicated exhibition of my photography for the General Assembly. And I also had to prepare a keynote that was directed at the heads of states and the corporations. So it took me months to craft the messaging and to craft the photography to actually deliver that message. What I was thinking as I was preparing is 8 billion people don't get invited to do these things at Davos. It's a huge responsibility to bring with me the concern, the worry, the anxiety that we're all feeling. And that was the message that I was preparing to do. So my question was, I'm not here to give you hope. I'm here looking for hope and listening carefully to what they were saying. And there were some hopeful moments.
Christina, great to see you. Thanks for coming on Planet Visionaries again. It's been at least a year or two since we last spoke. What have you been up to?
It's been so busy, Alex, and thank you for having me. I really love seeing you in person, so this is fun. Been super busy. There's stuff happening around our planet that needs
surprising.
Yeah, and now it's been fun, busy, doing a lot of expedition work, but also art busy, which is so delightful to see your work printed and people enjoying what we do. So it's been amazing.
Have you been working on a book project as well?
Yeah. But
does that go hand in hand with gallery exhibitions and things, or?
I think the book kind of triggers the exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you sit down to actually put a book together, you go through a lot of work.
What's the theme of the book? Like, how do you curate all these images?
So you know what? I should look into all the people that I work with around the world that are doing amazing things, and I find hope in what they're doing. The people that are planting corals or the people that are saving elephants. And I was building a book with that in mind. And I thought, if I was an extraterrestrial arriving on planet Earth, what would they be looking at? They would be looking at a big ocean with a lot of incredible wildlife, but also at the indigenous people that have been the stewards of this planet for so long, and wildlife, the building blocks of life on planet Earth. So that's what I put in my book.
It sounds like you were writing the book that you needed.
Oh, totally. This is my personal life raft.
Nice. And so what's is it out?
It was out, and it was an interesting way of doing a book. Because the following on Instagram, they're actually real people. And they're very, very invested in a lot of the work I do, the things that I say. So I invited my followers to be part of the project, the Hope Project, because that's the name of my book. And if it gives me hope, maybe it can help others as well. So I invited all my followers to pre-purchase my book. And they financed the whole project before we even printed a single book.
Wow.
It was amazing. And people on Instagram helped me find the photographs, helped me craft the stories. So I included the names of everybody who help make this project possible in the book.
I'm curious about the link sort of between action and optimism, or like that sense of hope and actually being involved and taking action. And I'm curious because you're sort of describing this process of bringing people into it in order for them to feel optimism, I suppose. Do you think that's required?
You tell me, Alex, because you've been on top of that rock looking down 1,000 feet. Yeah. How do you tackle it? Start moving.
Yeah, exactly. Take a deep breath, compose yourself, and move forward.
And
or down climb, but at least take action decisively.
Right, like what's the next step that I can take towards action? And I think fear is paralyzing, and giving people the opportunity to take any action is the beginning of, okay, let's find the next path. And oftentimes we find solutions. And when you mobilize enough people, amazing things happen. Like, here at the United Nations, we are ratifying the High Seas Treaty. This took thousands of people taking action, writing ministers, petitions, donations to get 60 countries to ratify a treaty that is going to change the way we protect the ocean.
Yeah, what is the High Seas Treaty?
Every country that has a coastline has an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles. But beyond those 200 nautical miles, it's no man's land. It belongs to nobody. That's the high seas.
That's where the pirates are.
The pirates are, the industrial fishing fleet, but that's also where a lot of the big migrations of wildlife happen.
But it's also where most wildlife is, right? I mean, that's the bulk of the ocean is the high seas.
And of course, the bulk of life on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's not protected, and there's no mechanism to tell people, well, you can't do that here. So now we have the mechanism.
What activities is it banning in those regions? Like, what's it protecting?
I think the work is beginning now.
Oh, I see. Right? So nothing so far, basically, but it's establishing the potential to regulate fishing, let's say.
Yes, and it's very aspirational because scientists have told us very clearly that we need to protect at least 30% of the land and sea by 2030 in order to give planet Earth a chance. And so protecting the high seas, creating marine protection out there is a huge part of that.
I mean, this opportunity to protect the high seas, the High Seas Treaty, what happens with ocean conservation?
It's a very funny thing because we are terrestrial creatures. We breathe air, so we think that the whole planet is Earth. It truly is ocean. And the ocean is the engine of life on Earth. It's what allows the atmosphere to have the perfect chemistry for life to exist. Mm-hmm. And we have neglected it badly. We have dumped so much waste into the ocean, plastic, pollution of all kinds. And we have also extracted a massive amount of biomass through industrial fishing. Mm. So it is in great danger. And the scientists that study this, it's actually pretty scary. Mm. So getting all this attention to protect the ocean is amazing. And it's happening on many fronts. Countries themselves are protecting their exclusive economic zone. And there are huge pushes in countries like Panama has protected 54% of its continental waters. Wow. It's larger than their land. It's huge. Chile has done the same. The push to make countries make those decisions requires a lot of public support and public pressure. The minister of this and that, they need to hear from the public, and that's where we come in.
One of the things I've been struck by in other interviews through Planet Visionaries, like chatting with some of the other conservationists that I've gotten to speak with in previous seasons, is just how effective marine conservation can be, like marine protected areas, and how quickly ocean life can bounce back if given the opportunity. Is that something that you've gotten to see personally at all?
Absolutely. The ocean is such a dynamic ecosystem that if you leave it alone, it regenerates pretty quickly. And we have many examples of places where there was intensive fishing or human activity, and then it was protected, and within, a decade. We also have examples of massive, enormous tracts of land, of ocean. There's a park in Mexico that's impossible to pronounce. It's called Revillagigedo. You want to try?
No, I won't even try.
And that is one of the largest marine parks in North America, for sure. And it used to be intensely fished by the tuna industry. And when it was protected, it became what's known as a no-take zone, so no industrial fishing. Mm-hmm. And of course, the tuna industry people screamed, oh, we're going to lose our revenue. Mm-hmm. But it didn't happen. The fish inside the park got bigger, they laid more eggs, And yeah, the baby fish swam outside
And
of
you
the
wind up
park.
getting more tuna outside the park.
They're getting more fish now outside of the park than ever before, and it's been an incredible success.
Tell me about what you've seen in your diving, your experiences in the oceans. You've been quoted talking about the ocean getting quiet, like the lack, both acoustically, like actually hearing less, and then also seeing less, just visually quiet. Talk about that a little bit and what that means in the ocean.
Yeah, the ocean is a difficult place to understand and so inaccessible for so many people. But there are places, for example, coral reefs, that are busy places. A coral reef houses 25% of life in the ocean.
It's like the city of the ocean.
It's like an apartment building where lots of things are happening. What happens when the atmosphere gets warmer is that the ocean absorbs a lot of that extra heat. Actually, if it was not for the ocean, this planet will already be uninhabitable. It has absorbed 90% of the extra heat in the atmosphere. And when the water gets warmer, a lot of creatures are not able to adapt. And humans have that in common with fish. We are not happy when it gets too hot. So coral reefs get stressed out and they start bleaching. And the process of bleaching, I equated to the corals vomit out their symbiotic algae that keeps them alive. It's like a little tiny solar panel. That's an algae with photosynthesis producing sugars for the reef. And then the reef dies. And when the housing dies, all the creatures that live there die too. And it becomes a quiet place. So we were recently diving in Raja Ampat, Indonesia, which is supposed to be one of the most amazing places to dive on the planet. And the big fish were gone. It was kind of like quiet and sad. But the opposite is true as well. You go to a place like Revillagigedo National Park in Mexico, where it's been protected now since 2017, fully protected, no industrial activity whatsoever, and the fish have come back. And so you're diving there and there's lots of schools of fish, and all of a sudden it goes quiet. And it's because a massive tuna has come in.
Yeah.
And you see this monster fish come through. It takes your breath away. And yet most people will only get to see tuna in a can. And so it's difficult to explain just how magnificent a creature and how scary it is for the other fish. Tuna are carnivorous.
It's funny. I mean, I don't spend much time in the ocean. Actually, almost no time in the ocean. And I've definitely just never thought about the ocean as a loud place or a quiet place. But what you're talking about makes sense, that there's lots of activity in a healthy ecosystem. I mean, even more so, I guess, than in terrestrial ecosystems, because it's so three-dimensional.
Yeah.
There's just stuff happening above and below. I mean, of course, there are birds, I suppose, on land, but it's just not quite the same density of life. You
know how I like to think about it, Alex? I think about planet Earth as a spaceship. And if we could imagine it like that, we would get a full briefing on how the spaceship works, where the water comes from, how we deal with waste. And yet we live on the spaceship and we understand very little about how it works. Turns out that the ocean is a huge part of the engine that keeps it alive, because most of the oxygen we breathe, we've been told it comes just from the Amazon, but no, it comes from phytoplankton, for little minuscule plants floating in the ocean, tiny bacteria. And what happens when the water gets warm? How do these creatures become affected? Are we a little worried that they might not be able to produce the oxygen we breathe? I think we should be. So yeah, we're just learning about what I think of as fellow nations, these communities of animals like whales. Turns out that whales are tremendous allies in the fight against climate change, because a whale will dive really deep to feed in the deep, dark waters, plankton, krill down there. And then it has to come back up to the surface to breathe. They're mammals. And it also poops up there. And whale poop is fertilizer for phytoplankton, just like on land. It's full of nitrogen and nutrients that make phytoplankton bloom. You have more plants, it absorbs more carbon, it produces more oxygen. It's critically important. Who knew? And whales are talking to each other. So this Monday, I was at a conference where Dr. David Gruber from Project SETI was talking about how he's using AI and machine learning to decipher what whales are saying to each other, to come up with a whale alphabet. And, what are they saying? I'd love to know.
I mean, what do you think it would mean if we actually could communicate with some of the life undersea? Do you think it would shift the human perception of the value of the oceans and all that kind of thing if we could actually understand what animals were experiencing?
Yeah. Years ago, I read a passage in a book called The Outermost House by Henry Beston. And the first line of the most famous passage in the book starts by saying, we need another and a wiser concept of animals, because as humans, we turn to see animals as underlings, as inferior to us, somehow incomplete. And yet they're fully able and adapted to live where they live and to survive. And they are our fellow nations, contributing to keeping this planet alive. And we know very little about them or why they're here. We're exterminating biodiversity on planet Earth without understanding how it is the full complement of species working together that keeps us alive. So would I love to hear what whales have to say? I imagine an animal like a southern right whale. We have spent a little bit of time in the water with these massive creatures that are truly nomadic. These whales migrate between the Southern Ocean, Antarctica, and places like, the underbelly of Australia. It's full of great white sharks. So It's a fun place to dive. And, these are like wild ocean waters. These, what do they see? How do they navigate the storms? People talk about crossing the Drake Passage, and it is tremendously scary. And these whales just go back and forth. What do they know? What could they teach us?
I was like, that's because they're underwater, out of the wind, out of the crazy weather.
Well, they have to come up and breathe.
That's true. I've actually never thought about that. I mean, when in the Southern Ocean, when it's getting racked by storms, underwater, is it calm or is it turbulent as well? Like, is it crazy for the fish and for the whales?
It gets calmer as you go deeper, but the whales need to come up to the surface to breathe and travel and find their bearings. Imagine this. I was in the Azores not so long ago, and the water up there in the North Atlantic gets pretty cold. So I was kind of surprised to find a loggerhead sea turtle just kind of swimming around. I was like, it's kind of cold for a turtle. I got in the water, and the turtle was kind of stunted, so it didn't swim away. And it allowed me to swim all around it, and it had a little tag on its fin. And that tag told me that this turtle was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. And how does an animal like that, finds its way 8,000 kilometers, 4,000 miles away from where it was born? Probably hitched a ride on the Gulf Stream. And
it's like, do you think the turtle was bummed to find itself hazards? Like a little
I
chilly?
think this is part of their migration. But the critical thing is that one day, for reasons only it understands, it will make a U-turn, and following a map that exists only in its mind, it will make its way back to the exact same beach where it was born. How does it know? What kind of electromagnetic sensors or constellation navigation an animal like a turtle has to find its way? You and I could not. We would need GPS and instruments. What can we learn from animals that we just haven't asked the right questions because we don't speak their language?
I mean, sharing these kinds of stories. I mean, just hearing you talk about the turtle, I'm like, that's so amazing. I want to hear more about the turtle. I want to hear more about these whales. Like, that's so incredible. I mean, I suppose really that's at the heart of what you're trying to achieve, is to bring those stories to the masses so they can help, better understand and better appreciate life in the oceans. I mean, talk about how you bring these stories back for other people.
Yeah, I think every child that's born on planet Earth, I think we all are born with an innate curiosity and love of animals and nature. And somehow along the way in the education system and parents that are already detached from nature, we lose it. I think of my job as a photographer to bring back these stories, to remind us of that awe and the mystery of the creatures that share the planet with us. And I do it, of course, through books and through my Instagram account, but also through these exhibitions. When somebody stands there and looks at a photograph of an elephant in Amboseli, these big tuskers, each one of their tusks weighs 150 pounds. And these massive male elephants get to be 50, 60 years old. How is it possible that people are still allowed to buy a hunting license to kill an animal like that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I feel like my job as a photographer, I'm just a permeable membrane allowing a conversation to happen between that thing I photographed and the person who's looking at the picture. And my favorite reaction is, I had no idea. when somebody walks away with a little new nugget of awe and wonder.
What's your preferred way to share those kinds of stories? I mean, through photography, through galleries, through books. I mean, like, what do you find the most fulfilling?
I like sharing the stories, but as you know, I'm a huge introvert. I'd rather be home, playing with my photos and making books and things like that. So for me, it takes a huge toll to get on an airplane and go to a city and face a big audience. By the time I come off stage, I'm exhausted, and all I want to do is curl in the fetal position.
Mm-hmm. And yet you do it because you think it's your way to contribute.
I have had so many times, I come off stage and I'll have somebody come up to me to say, I didn't believe in climate change, as if it was a matter of belief. But somehow your photographs have convinced me that something is happening and we need to act. And that is hugely rewarding. But I also have hundreds, thousands of young people come up to me to say, I had no hope and I felt apathetic. And after listening to you, I feel like we can actually turn this around. And that feels even better.
I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but talk a little bit about getting some of these images, because, we sort of glossed over the hard work involved, but I mean, you're diving for very long periods of time in very cold waters with sharks and things like that. It's one thing to talk about taking nature photos, but what does it actually take to capture some of these images?
Yeah, so I actually, to clarify, I do take a lot of pictures underwater, but I also love taking, pictures of wildlife on land. And then the third thing that I do that I really love is I spend a lot of time with indigenous people photographing in remote communities. But the underwater photographs are particularly difficult to make because as a human, as a terrestrial creature, you're entering an ecosystem where
foreign
you
environment,
don't belong. And if you are on scuba, you can only be underwater for about an hour. So you need to be very precise in what you're looking for and where you're going. You need to allow animals to come close to you the way that the optics of a camera underwater work. If the creature is not close to the camera, it just looks like it's very far and distant and blurry. And the ocean has
I've never even thought about that. Are taking photos underwater, it's a different process. It's more
challenging. Imagine all the particles that are suspended in the water, and it's dark underwater. As you go even 10 feet deep, 30 feet deep, it just starts getting darker and darker. You need to have external light like strobes. And that light is going to light
scare the animals.
It scares the animals, but it also, lights every particle of stuff that's floating in the ocean, including plastic. And so it's very hard. On top of that, you are sinking, you're becoming buoyant, negatively buoyant, and you are dealing with currents, and you have other people that you need to keep an eye on.
You're slowly getting pulled out into the deep blue while you're trying to get your photo.
God, you can get picked up by an like a current that's going down so fast. The forces in the ocean are massive. And when you realize that you're getting dragged down, you could be like 100 feet in a minute, If you're not paying attention, a lot of divers...
That's the stuff of nightmares.
It really is.
You're so focused on getting your photo, and all of a sudden
you're like, oh my God, I'm getting dragged down. And there's no amount of kicking that can peel you off a current that's dragging you fast. So you have to be so careful. And you're feeling your environment all the time. A change in temperature, a change in how the water feels could mean that you're getting in a downswell, or it could mean that a big animal like a whale is coming nearby. And this has happened to us too, where you're swimming on top of a school of fish and all of a sudden you feel a displacement of the water. And it's because humpbacks are coming from the bottom to feed on the school of fish.
And then you get out of the way.
Get out of the way. So yeah, the ocean is a dangerous place. And on top of that, there's animals like sharks.
Actually, how often do you actually experience fear in the ocean? Like while you're working, how often do you actually have scary situations?
Oh, I mean, often.
Yeah, okay.
And, the things that scare me the most are not the animals for sure. It's mostly, diving is such so full of variables. There's been times when I've lost my dive buddies underwater. Like you're so involved in the camera, you look up and everybody's gone.
You dive, but you mean the people you're diving with?
Yeah.
Oh, and you're just suddenly alone in the ocean?
Yeah. So then, and we do a lot of alone diving. We are a mixed team of video and still photography. So the video people hate my strobes. So I end up diving alone, and then you come up and, there's no boat. And then what? You're alone floating in the ocean thinking, I wonder if they realize that I'm missing.
Well, you better hope.
Like those are feelings that really center you into like, maybe I've made a mistake.
So I'm curious, and I'm asking actually because with personal experience in climbing, climbing is very scary. And so you're often getting very, as you can imagine, yeah. And so you're often dealing with fear, but I actually feel like that's made it easier to manage fear in other aspects of life. And I'm kind of curious, with all your experience with diving and with wildlife and these other things, has it made it easier to sort of manage the stress, manage the fear of public speaking, going to Davos, like things like that? Like, are the other fears involved in the advocacy and the work that you do made more manageable through, by being really scared in the ocean all the time?
Alex, this question coming from you means so much, and nobody's ever asked me this. So yeah, never thought about it, but you're absolutely right.
That's funny because I think about that all the time, because I get asked about fear nonstop, and I'm sort of like, well, it makes the rest of life so much less scary, basically.
Totally.
Or at least you're better able to handle those fears and manage.
There's also an element of knowing and understanding that when you are confronted with a moment of fear, you kind of know you're in the right place, because the easy stuff is not that frightening.
Well,
anybody can do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But sometimes when you have moments of fear, it's because you're in the wrong place. And
and you made a mistake,
particularly for somebody like you or like
you,
me, when we're so experienced in a certain field.
Yeah.
Typically, if you're getting really scared, it's because you're doing something wrong or you made an error of judgment or something went slightly sideways.
Totally, and I think we should have probably died 1,000 times already, and by sheer luck or stupidity,
sheer persistence, we just made it through a few things.
Yeah, you've made it through, and it teaches you, right? And every time that you learn a little bit more of, how to avoid putting yourself in those bad situations, it teaches you, and you become more and more experienced. But God, the variables are endless, and your life depends a lot on the people around you. At least in my field, diving. Yeah. So the people that live with us on the boat, their job is to pull me out of the water. I often tell them I'm the only woman on board, and they're stronger, they're younger, and I'm going to be 60, Alex. Yeah. And so I tell them, if you see me struggling, assume that I'm struggling.
If it looks like I'm struggling, I'm struggling.
Exactly.
Help me.
No heroics, and I have no ego. Just come and save me.
Yeah. Come pull me out.
And so we have all these young, strapping dudes on the boat, our captain, our first mate, who are amazing, and they'll just pull me out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Expand that out to all the work that you've done through advocacy and public speaking and things like that. Surely those are often scary as well, or at least pushing you out of your comfort zone in a different way.
You're right. You all of a sudden learn how to steel yourself and confront the things that scare you. Public speaking, for sure. There's nothing like walking into the Roy Thomson Auditorium in Toronto and 7,000 people sit in it. And you look up on the stands and there's people as far as you can see. And you're all alone on the stage, and you get better and better at it. And there comes a point when public speaking starts being really fun and you're not nervous anymore. But God, just there's so many things that are frightening. But I think for me, the scariest thing is what's happening to our planet. And I feel such personal pain at the loss of biodiversity, the knowledge that there's animals that are going to go extinct no matter what we do, that we're too late to save. And that scares me more.
Yeah. And that makes all the other fears worth it.
Oh, totally worth it. Yeah. Yeah.
Slightly sobering to think the animals are going extinct no matter what we do. And I think actually the thing that makes me kind of sad is animals are going extinct without us ever even knowing about it. The things we haven't even necessarily learned. And so it's like you don't even know what you don't know because
they're part of the spaceship, right? And what was their job? That we lost the engineer.
Yeah, I was about to say, you hope you don't lose the engineer without knowing it. Talk about your work with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative.
I think people like you and I who have these careers, you start small doing a little thing. And that to get to the top, you have to climb Mount Everest. And so you get to base camp when you become a National Geographic assignment photographer. And then you climb to the next place, you get an exhibition. And when you get invited to be part of the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, you know you're close to the summit.
You're somewhere way up there, Camp 4, Camp 5.
Right.
You're nearing the top.
You're really reaching for the top now.
And how has that helped with your work?
So Rolex is an incredibly beautiful brand that has a lot of alignment in values, which is important to me. But they have done something for me that is invaluable, and that they've opened up their media footprint, the relationship that they have with important communications outlets like this podcast. And they give me that microphone to talk about the things I care about, which to me means everything. To have that conversation in those large outlets is...
Yeah, I suppose in a way that's the whole point of your work, is to be able to have those conversations and to show your work to people who, to make sure that people actually see the work.
Yeah, and they do so much elevating what I do to become really an art form. And they support the idea of my art becoming the gateway that allows people to see what's happening in the front lines. And to do it in a way that's hopeful and inspiring and hopefully beautiful.
Yeah, actually, as you were saying that, I was like, do you ever feel pressure to, like, when you talk about your art and elevating art and creating art, I think about musicians and like, how do you make your next album? And like, it's like, because to some extent, I'm curious to what extent you think the photos that you take are sort of hard work versus luck versus, how replicable, because it's like you have some images that are incredible. It's like, how do you know that you're going to go out and just get another incredible photo? It's like, you just don't
Alex,
really know.
You just don't. Don't you get a little bit of the same? I mean, people are waiting to see what Alex is going to climb next.
But so how stressful, do you find that challenging? I mean, do you feel...
challenging. And yes, the pressure of coming up with the next lady with a goose or with the next flowers in my hair, these photographs that become iconic. Even the photograph of the starving polar bear that went viral and became one of Time Magazine's top 10 images of the year. It's hard to come by. And we, as photographers, deal with so much failure. Like I come back with cards and cards full of crap. And then I have to look at it and remind myself of what a loser I am. And then every once in a while, you go back and you're like, there must be something. Sometimes when you're looking at hundreds of thousands of images, you are editing that for specific use, for a magazine layout. And when you go back 5 years later and you look at it with the idea of, okay, it could be an art piece, you're looking with a completely different lens. And so I recently found these 3 huskies, and they look like it's the same dog with 3 heads. And it's really fun. And I think Cerberus, that's what I called it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And I think it's really fun and really beautiful, these puppies. But yeah, it's very difficult to come up with the next image. And yet there's always this incredible excitement of going out to shoot again to see if you can find your next amazing moment.
I mean, talk about what you're doing moving forward with your work. What do you see as the opportunities for conservation?
Yeah, first of all, I think I'm so lucky that I get to share my life and this adventure we're in with my partner, my husband, my photographer, Paul Nicklin, because it's so much fun to have your partner do the thing with you and be part of the whole experience, from taking the photographs to the museum wall. And we have a boat that's going around the world, the Sea Legacy One. So we are planning on going back on the boat in the next few months. We're going to Komodo National Park in Indonesia, famous for the microscopic life there, tiny octopus, tiny little creatures that only come out at night. And these are like the other characters in the spaceship that are really fun to meet.
How do you even document microscopic octopuses?
So this is a whole other level of diving.
Yeah, I was like, how do you take a picture of something so small?
So that is, we don't do it with scuba. We use these equipment called rebreather. That is kind of like the free solo of diving, where you're rebreathing your own breath, and you have a tank that injects new oxygen into the breath, and you have a scrubber that extracts the CO2. And it teaches you a lot about these 2 gases and how important they are for human life. Too much oxygen will kill you. Too little oxygen will kill you. It's like the Goldilocks of diving. But rebreather, what it does is a couple of things. It allows you to dive without bubbles because you're rebreathing, right? So you're not exhaling. And that bubbles in the underwater environment really scare animals. So all of a sudden you're like invisible. It's like a Harry Potter invisibility cloak.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So if you stay still, animals will come really close to you. And the other thing it does is because you're rebreathing your breath, you don't get cold. You're breathing these warm, moist breath.
Interesting.
It's like an extension of your lungs, right? And it allows you to stay underwater for a long time, many hours. So that's how we do it.
Like, do you want to stay underwater for many hours?
Yeah. So instead, when you have a scuba tank on your back, you only have 1 hour. So imagine that you spend 45 minutes looking for the tiny octopus and you find it in the last 10 minutes of the dive. It's like, oh, bomb, I have to go up. But with a rebreather, you can stay down for 3-4 hours. So
what is it like to be in your own tiny little world for many hours underwater looking for a tiny
tell
octopus?
me, Alex.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think
It's awesome.
yeah. It's probably awesome if you love what you do and you're comfortable where you are and everything is going well in your world. But I mean, if you're having a hard time in your own thoughts, the idea of just being, contained underwater like that for hours, I suspect for some people that's their worst nightmare.
It's very liberating and it's very zen, but it also has its moments of fear. I was telling the story the other day. You were in the audience of diving at night in Indonesia, and all of a sudden looking up from whatever rock I was looking underneath, and all the other divers are gone. I don't see anybody else's light, and it's pitch black. And people have warned us. They've said, it's scary here because there's very large crocodiles that come from Australia across the open ocean to Indonesia. And there's been instances of divers at night, all of a sudden you turn around and there's a crocodile there, like the thing you're not expecting. So this thought creeps into my mind as I'm sitting there alone at 100 feet. And all of a sudden I feel like something is looking at me. That feeling? Mm-hmm. And I turn around and there's this tiny little squid just hovering over my head. And it's kind of like curiously looking, what are you doing? And so when I turn towards it, my lights hit it. And all of a sudden it gets all excited. And it starts changing colors because squid and octopus have cells on their skin that allows them to change color and produce their own light. It's just like a magnificent light show. It's incredible. And so this little squid, curiously swimming around, checking out my lights, it catches a glimpse of its own reflection on my dome, and then it goes nuts. It has these tentacles.
It's a friend.
It's
like amazing.
Reaching out, and it's so close to me. Of course, I'm in a rebreather, so there's no bubbles. He's not scared. I had like the most magical half hour with this little animal. And when I was coming up alone from my night dive in the pitch black, thinking about crocodiles, I kept thinking, I'm so lucky because I get to meet this creature.
I was going to say, but we're so lucky that you had that experience because I got to see the image and it is incredible. I didn't know that squid could do that. I didn't know they could look like that. It's like
extraterrestrial, right?
Yeah. It definitely looked like something. It kind of looked like something out of an alien movie, like some kind of horror thing. But it is incredible, and for me anyway, it really helps highlight the diversity of life on Earth. We're like, oh, who even knew that there were creatures like that? I think that's a real gift and an opportunity for you to be able to share those kinds of images.
Amazed and in awe and inspired by our planet every day. And, some mornings I get up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to spend another day on planet Earth, which is the most beautiful spaceship in the galaxy and the only one that has life. So.
And that's why your book is called Hope. Good, because despite all the challenges, occasionally you still feel...
I absolutely do. And so if you need a personal life raft, get my book.
Well, I think we'll call it good there. Christina, thank you so much for chatting with me on Planet Visionaries again. And all the best for your continued diving.
Thank you. And you be careful out there,
Yeah,
Alex.
I hope you don't find a crocodile. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.